What is good, Tsla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla's SPY and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down some very important deliveries estimates for Tesla that just came out, what's going on with the share price moving forward, and what you should be watching for as we have important data coming out for the markets going into tomorrow. But before I begin the doubles information, before I talk about some very important news about Tesla, what you should be watching for going into the week, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks, and the offer ends in just about 11 hours from now. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening to Tesla. I just want to mention that Tesla got a very, very nice looking push up to $200 a share on Friday, only to see a little bit of a rejection from there. And there is a risk of Tesla dipping just a bit, but it doesn't really matter because what's going to matter more will be deliveries coming out on Tuesday. So when deliveries come out, that will either cause Tesla to rally once again to 220 plus, or we're about to get a very, very big rug pull. So I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen. Even if a Tesla does come down a bit, it could just be a temporary move to the downside and we could always bounce later on. So I'm not really too worried. I just want to talk about what could end up playing out, especially as we have some estimates coming out. So just as a reminder, okay, Tesla's expected to release its Q2 2024 production delivery numbers on Tuesday, July 2nd. That's 2 days from now, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They've consistently released it on the second day of the month, which is 100% true. I can't wait to see what Tesla ends up announcing. Now, one thing worth noting is that sometimes Tesla's a little bit late. They could be like an hour late, sometimes 2 hours late. Sometimes it happens, but usually it should be on the same day. So that's when we should be getting the numbers. That's going to be not only for Q2, but also for like July as a whole. It's also going to be the first half deliveries report, at least for Tesla. We will see how they did for Q1 and Q2 in total. On top of this, Troy Tesla has come out, and huge shout outs to them for being very, very transparent, giving us good estimates and information about Tesla. They've come out and they've given their estimations for Tesla's production and deliveries numbers. They think that Tesla will produce about 416,000 of its models, whereas the total deliveries will be about 423,000. That's what they're thinking for Q2, which is below analysts' expectations of 441 to 450,000. Now, they're aiming for less than a 3% error as usual, which is, once again, very interesting and worth noting. We will see how things go for Tesla. I am seeing some weakness, at least in the Chinese data and also some European sales. So I am a little concerned about that, but we'll see how the numbers look. The reason I say that is because if you guys watch my previous video and I break down some estimates, I showed you guys some Chinese charts and they were not looking that good, at least for Tesla. I'll go over those maybe in another video, but if you want to see them, just go to my previous video where I broke down the deliveries estimation. And that's where I broke down the Chinese charts. There's a lot to that. There's also some news coming out that Tesla's growing its Mexican team even more as we're starting to see a lot more job listings. That's good for the Giga Mexico, and that's going to give Tesla a lot of advantages once they start to open that up and start, production and such, which will take some time. We're not really there yet. There've also been some delays, but Tesla will be fine. I'm still very confident in its growth and such. Now, one thing worth noting is that we have a buy rating from Stifle. Not bad from Tesla. Buyers did step in. They started to push it higher. The price risk ratio has been going up as Tesla's been building a lot of strength, and Mondays are historically green days about 53% of the time. In terms of its volatility, we tend to be more volatile around 10 and 11 a.m. now. There's been a little shift here as we're seeing a lot of buyers stepping in later on, or very, very early on it during the day. June tends to be a strong month, but historically July is not as strong. We'll see if we end up getting a little shift in July. We'll see how things go with that. But don't forget that we also have something very big approaching the RoboTaxi event coming up in August. So as we get closer to that, I still think Tesla could run even more. Volume is going up, which is good for Tesla. So far, so good, at least for Tesla. Now, some news about the overall market. I'm going to go over this real quick before I break down the charts. Let me mention that tomorrow is going to be Monday, July 1st, 2024. 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI report. And then 30 minutes after market open at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the ISM Manufacturing PMI, new orders, and also prices. New orders and prices will be the two most important ones because this will help us understand manufacturing numbers as it makes up a big sector in our economy. And it's very important for inflationary data, especially the manufacturing prices. So we'll see how things go. Don't forget, guys, that for Tuesday, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech and some jobs numbers. Jerome Powell's speech could shake the markets on Tuesday. For Wednesday, we also have some exports and imports data in the ISM services data. So this is now like the same data as Monday, except for the services sector. Very, very important. That makes up a large chunk of our economy. And then for Thursday, the stock market's going to be closed in commemorance of July 4th. That's why we don't really have too many earnings this week. The really important earnings start next week, especially on Friday when we have the big bank earnings. So earnings becomes very serious the week after this one. For now, we just have very minor earnings, and then the market's going to be closed on Thursday. That's why a lot of these companies are not really announcing their earnings. Right now, fear is making up the emotion driving the markets, despite how overvalued things are. That's why the market momentum is at extreme greed, because momentum is still greedy. There's still a lot of greed in this market in terms of how high we tend to be because of these indicators. But as we go higher, there's still fear building simultaneously because the market's at such a high valuation. And then you also have the puts and call option positioning showing signs of life as we're seeing more puts being closed. And then volatility is kind of neutral. The VIX is kind of lackluster. It's not really doing much just yet. So we're just going to have to wait and see. So what do I see for Tesla? What do I think is going to play out? Honestly, guys, regardless of deliveries, this chart is still bullish. Even if we do get a little rug pull temporarily, it's very, very possible Tesla makes some very, very interesting moves. Now, we have a nice inverse head and shoulders that looks very, very nice on the 4 hour. Is it possible we're about to form a symmetrical structure where Tesla kind of like pushes up to this resistance in the 200s? Then we get a rug pull and we come down to this level, like just like how we had these levels right here. And then we get a big bounce later on. That's one possibility. Or do we just continue to fly up to 220? It depends on Tesla's delivery numbers. Tesla, Troy like has been saying that, or Troy Tesla, excuse me, they're saying that basically they're expecting 423,000 deliveries for Tesla. That's their estimation. If Tesla does something like that or even below that, that's going to be a little bearish because I would say that that's well below what we're expecting. We're expecting at least 441 to 450,000. If we break expectations, Tesla could just run from here. So we'll see how things end up going. In my opinion, at least as far as Tesla goes, I think that it's very hard to predict what's going to happen with deliveries. But I can tell you this: tomorrow there might be a little dip coming to Tesla. I think that we could get closer to our 195 area where this wick happens to be a little bit of a dip. And then we'll be watching to see if we end up testing 193 after that. So I'm going to be watching those supports. I think it's very important to watch for that. We had this wick right over here, which led to a little bit of a dip. We could be dipping all the way down to the 195s and start to consolidate, maybe go a little bit lower. But then overall, I still think that we're holding up very well. And then we're going to be looking for a big reaction once deliveries comes out. But this does look like it wants to dip a little bit, technically speaking. Am I worried? Not whatsoever. Don't worry about this temporary dip. That's just going to be very, very temporary and won't really cause much. We have resistance at 199. We have support at 196 to 195, this entire range right here. I think that we could dip a little bit, then we'll see if we get a bounce or not. I also want to note that for the current trend on Tesla, we have a nice looking structure. I will watch and see if we get a rejection here. We can actually dip here first before we try to get a big bounce. It's also possible we kind of priced in deliveries and we might get a rug pull. So I'm kind of leaning a little bit more in that direction, but I honestly don't know, guys. It depends on deliveries. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I just want to say that I'm a little bit apprehensive because of the fact that the charts I showed you yesterday showed Chinese numbers were not looking too good. Same thing with the European ones. So we'll see. I mean, we had one more week left. The data I showed you guys did not show the final week of June. So who knows what's going to happen. But like I said before, I see a little dip coming tomorrow, some consolidation, and then a big reaction is going to come after deliveries. I think we either get a dip down to 180, then we bounce all the way back up to the 200s, or we just go straight up to 220 plus going into delivery. So I don't know which one it's going to be. So we'll just have to wait and see. Tomorrow, just know there might be a dip in consolidation. Now, sometimes the market is very tricky and we can't truly just, pick one direction. We have to wait and see for confirmation. And that's what's happening to SPY and the QQQ. Look at the last couple of weeks. We were at 542, we pushed up to 550, back to 542, back to 550, back and forth, back and forth. Price action is pretty crazy. So if we're bearish on SPY, you want to see this neckline break. You want to see it lose the support at 542.5. If that breaks, we're going to be looking for a move all the way down to 537 to fill our gap. If we start bouncing, we break past 547, I'll be looking for a test of about 550 or very close to that area. And if that breaks, we're going up to new all-time highs towards 555. So I would say we're kind of in the middle right now, going back and forth and back and forth. So wait and see which way we break for confirmation. I wish I could give you guys a prediction, but I just want to say that the market's completely range bound. So we have to wait and see which way we break to determine which way the move will be. Sometimes when you're trading, this happens. So we just have to be very patient and give this the time it needs, because we keep bouncing off 542. We keep getting rejections off 550. We may continue this trend until we see a break. So watch and see which way we break. For now, it all depends. Going into tomorrow, we might see a little push on SPY, by the way, tomorrow, just looking at this as we're bouncing off the 50 EMA, a little push, but we'll see if the move fails or not. We have to be very patient. So wait and see. For Nvidia, we're on a bit of a downtrend right now as we have a flag forming. We're on a bit of a downtrend, kind of making lower highs and lower lows right here. So we're going to likely continue this trend. We might pop and then drop and continue to downtrend closer to 120 unless we get a break above 127. If we break 127 because of some kind of news, we could turn back to bullish. Otherwise, we're on a downtrend right now, and the odds favor us downtrending a little bit longer. So I'm seeing some weakness on Nvidia. It might continue to downtrend a little bit longer. So we'll see how things go. For Bitcoin, Bitcoin's trying to break past 62,000. If that breaks, we're going to be looking for a push for the previous support becoming resistance. I think this level right here is going to be tested 63,500 if we break past 62,000. If we reject here, we're going back down to 60,500. As of right now, it looks like Bitcoin is trying to bounce, so we'll see how things go. For the QQQ, just like SPY is getting tighter and tighter and tighter, is also kind of range bound. So if we lose 477, we're going to test 475. And if that breaks, we're dipping down to 468 to fill our gap. If we end up breaking past 484 and we close above that, we're going to favor the bulls. And this thing could push to all-time highs. If we break above 484, we're bullish. If we lose 477, we turn more bearish. Watch and see which way we break tomorrow. I'm going to be very patient with this because just like SPY, we're just range bound, back and forth price action, not really doing anything too significant. For Apple, it's just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. If we lose 210, I'll be looking at 207. If we break past 215, I'll be looking for 220. Otherwise, we're just going back and forth and back and forth. I think we're just going to get tighter and tighter and tighter before we see a much bigger move. So I'll just wait and see how things end up going from here. But that's going to be very important for how things end up developing. Looking at another couple of factors, I just want to mention that if you look at Palantir, Palantir is once again holding up very well, kind of consolidating in this 25 area. If we lose that, we'll be looking for a dip all the way back down towards 24.3. If we break through this, we'll be looking for 26. I think we might consolidate a bit, maybe dip a little bit towards 24.8. I think we might be retesting the 24s for a little bit of a dip. Then we might consolidate and see what the move is from there. For Super micro, we have a head and shoulders like structure that has developed. We have a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. If we end up losing support at 820, we'll be dipping all the way down towards 800, then 780. If we end up holding support, we'll be looking for a bounce for 850. But I think that because of the head and shoulders, the odds do favor this dipping down to about 780 to fill this imbalance. It's looking a bit more probable to me, so we'll see if that ends up being the case. For Rivian, I see this dipping down to 12.46 or about 12.5. If we hit that imbalance, we'll be pushing back up. If we lose that, we'll be dipping all the way down to the 11s. For SoFi, if SoFi ends up rejecting here, well, honestly, I'm not 100% sure about that yet. I do see it dipping a little bit. So that is like a small rejection since we're failing to hold the 50 EMA. I see a test of 6.5 coming. However, it might bounce off that because we have a nice inverse head and shoulders, a nice accumulation, and this does have an imbalance to fill around 6.7. So I think the most likely possibility is we test 6.5, then bounce to 6.7. That's what I think might happen to SoFi. We'll have to wait and see. The IWM Russell 2000, we're going to likely dip lower. I'm going to be looking for a test of around 201.4 to 202, that range right there. If we test this in balance, we're going to be pushing back up towards 205 plus. If we lose 201, we're going to be dipping all the way down towards 199. So look for 201. If we bounce off the 201.4 area, we're going to be pushing back up to 205 plus. If we end up losing 201.4, we're going to be dipping. Look for a little dip tomorrow and see if we get that bounce. That's going to be key for us. For AMD, this is looking decent. I do see some more upside potential in this. It could once again consolidate here at 162.5. If we break out, I'll be looking for 166. And if we end up losing 160, I'll be looking at 158. My guts tells me that 166 is more probable. For ARM has a nice kind of like, it looks to me like it's going to be testing 163. If we lose this, I'll be looking for 157. If we hold this, we're going to be looking for a rebound, but I do see the odds favoring a little bit of a dip. For Coinbase, we have a little bit of a structure forming here. We have like a channel that's forming. So I think that coin might continue to respect this. Look for a little dip tomorrow, and it's going to likely ride this trend line, just continue to uptrend like this. But if we lose this trend line, there's going to be a much bigger drop coming, and I think we could turn more bearish. And then Coinbase could be dipping all the way down to levels like 203 in the low 200s. So if we lose the big white trend line below, we turn bearish. Otherwise, we're on a slight uptrend on Coinbase, and we'll be watching to see if we end up holding. But there is a flag forming, so just be a little bit careful. It is trying to uptrend. I think Amazon will dip to 192.3 tomorrow. If we lose that, we're dipping down to 188. If we hold this, we're going to be bouncing back up to about 195. I see a risk of this dipping a little bit lower, and watch to see if we hold support or not. That's going to be pivotal. For Meta, Meta has 504 as support. If we lose this, we're going to be dipping all the way down towards 498. If we hold this, we're going to be bouncing back up to 510. We're kind of in the middle, so give this some time. There's a little bearish divergence here, and it looks a little bit more bearish, so it does favor downside somewhat more. So I do see a risk of us dipping back down to about 498, so just be careful. It looks a little bit more probable to me. For Microsoft, we have resistance at 450. We have support at 445. Because we lost our 20 EMA, I think we're going to be testing this yellow 50 EMA right here at 445. I think we might dip a little bit lower, and we'll see if we get a bounce or not, but I do see a little bit of a dip coming for this. For Google has resistance at 184. If we lose this, we'll be dipping all the way down towards 182. And if we hold this, we're going to be looking for a rebound. I see a little bit of a dip coming, so I find that to be a little bit more probable. For GameStop, one thing I'm liking about the memes, guys, is we have some very bullish structures forming. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders. We're seeing some buyers defending this 22 area. That's the level we called it as support in my previous videos. So that's holding up. If we could break past the high at 26, I see GameStop running to about 28, if not 30. I see a little run coming. If we could try to break past 26, I'm seeing some potential in GameStop. There is potential for a bounce. We'll see if that happens in the next 2 weeks. AMC is forming a nice cup here. It could be forming a handle. I think as long as we hold above 5, I'm going to be looking for 5.5. It is building some strength, looking at some momentum building. It looking pretty good in my personal opinion. DJT is kind of rejecting on the 4-hour time frame. We got a big rejection off our 200 EMA. This is looking a little bit weaker to me. So it looks to me like this might be dipping down to fill this gap. I think that there might be a little rejection coming in balance to fill to at least 29. So I see some weakness on DJT. So the odds favor the downside a little bit more. For the VIX, it's very indecisive. It does love to bounce historically off 11.5 to 12, and we are at the kind of like low 12s, but there's no sign of a bounce yet on the VIX. There's no sign of it breaking out. We need to see it break past 13.39 for this to really break out. There's no sign of that yet. It came close before, but ended up failing. So to me, it just looks like the VIX is consolidating, trading sideways. We just have to wait and see if we get a breakout or not. We're just going to have to be very, very patient. For the 10-year Treasury yield, is trying to bounce a bit, but what's going to affect this a lot is going to be Jerome Powell's speech on Tuesday. I'll see how this affects the yields because it's going to have a big effect on the equities market. So we'll have to wait and see how this ends up affecting these yields for the bonds. And then finally, we actually have, let me just double check this, the dollar. Now, the dollar is kind of tricky. It is kind of consolidating around 106, but there's a nice cup kind of like forming here. It could uptrend a little bit more, and that could lead to, once again, a rejection in the markets. If we reject off 106, however, then that could lead to the markets kind of like bouncing. As of right now, even though there's a nice cup forming, it's still kind of sideways trading for the last like week and a half. It's been stuck between 106 and about 105.7, going back and forth, not really doing a whole lot. So we'll just have to give this a little bit more time just to see how things kind of like develop from here. But it's just trading sideways, so give this the time it needs, and we'll see how things develop at least moving forward. So with that being said, at least as far as Tesla goes, Tesla is holding up very, very well. There's a nice looking uptrend right here, at least for the much bigger structure. But for the short term, there might be a little dip for tomorrow, guys. So just be very careful and be very mindful of that. There might be a little dip coming to Tesla to 195, if not 193. Then we might consolidate. Don't worry about tomorrow. What's going to matter is going to be deliveries, and we'll see if deliveries leads to a little bit of a rug pull just temporarily before a bigger bounce later approaching August. Or will we see a big rally just from this point on and we just start pushing for 220 plus? I can't predict that. It depends on deliveries, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens then. But honestly, guys, as a trader, I like to just be very patient and give the market the time it needs. But with that being said, I just want to say I really appreciate every single one of you guys for watching these videos, for leaving likes and comments. I appreciate all your guys' kind words, and I can't wait to see how we all develop, at least as time goes on. I want to see some great traders, a lot of great results and such. So with that being said, have a great end of your day. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy the weekend. And I will most definitely see you guys tomorrow to announce what's happening with data and what's happening with all the stuff that's coming out. All right. So until I see you guys again, have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll see you guys tomorrow before the market opens. Thank you. Tesla to the moon, because the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace out.